It is February, which means it's time to start preparing for March Madness. Now, this is the CBS bracketology from February 2nd. We're recording this video on the 2nd. It'll be out today, which is February 3rd. Go ahead and kick it off with the first round, or first four, and that's going to be USC Missouri. I mean, I could see either of these teams winning this game. USC, I'm not positive is going to make the tournament at this point. I'm a little more confident in Missouri, so I would lean Missouri here.
Yeah, I'm not really opposed to this one. I think, as we've seen in the past, the SEC has been pretty dominant when it comes to basketball, and I think Missouri is still a pretty good team.
Bethune-Cookman and Howard here. I really don't think it matters who wins this game. I'll go ahead and take Howard for that. And then we'll do the other 16 seed real quick. Merrimack and Vermont. Vermont's been here before. Might as well pick them. Again, it doesn't really affect anything. St. Mary's, New Mexico, I think is an interesting game. This is kind of another one where I'm more leaning New Mexico, but I could see either of these teams again.
I was leaning St. Mary's just because, kind of similar to Vermont, they've been here before, and just recently they were pretty competitive against Gonzaga. But I'll lean with you on this one because you've watched a little bit more than I have. So if you think New Mexico is the real deal, I have no reason to pick against you. So whatever you
I'm
want here.
I'm fine with St. Mary's as well. They've been hot recently for sure. New Mexico is also a mainstay in the tournament, so either one of those teams could win. Kicking off the first round, Duke and Long Island. I think that's a no-brainer. I'm not even going to ask you what you think about that. Villanova UCF. This one I would be completely torn on, to be honest.
Yeah, because this Villanova team is not as good as like we're used to seeing them. Because I feel like Villanova in the past is at least like a top five seed, and of course the recency bias is UCF just upset Texas Tech on their home court. But I think I'm still gonna lean Villanova because they've been competitive in the Big East, particularly with UConn. I think a couple times, but once again, I really could see either of those teams beating the other.
Next up is Tennessee Liberty. I really do think Tennessee should win that game. I know 5-12s are popular, but there's potentially another 5-12 around here that could happen. Um, Florida and Winthrop. I think you gotta go Florida there, defending national champions. I don't really see them going out in the first round. And then Arkansas, Tulane. Hate to go chalk, but I think you gotta go Arkansas in that one.
Yeah, I just think Calipari has been here way too many times, and Tulsa doesn't stand much of a chance here. So Arkansas should get the win there. Kansas and East Tennessee State, I think, is pretty much a no-brainer. The Jayhawks are pretty hot right now, and I think they are a team that a lot of people might expect to make a deep run, even if they're not going to end up being like a number one or a number two seed in the tournament.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think St. John's in Texas is an interesting matchup. I mean, I don't know. I feel like this is a game where Texas could pull off an upset here. Haven't really seen one yet. I kind of like the Longhorns over St. John's. Just St. John's started the season ranked in the top five. They've fallen, as you can see, all the way down from a preseason two seed down to a seven. They were a two seed last year. I just feel like they probably aren't going to go quite as far this season. And Texas is a bad matchup.
Agreed. I think Texas has proven that they can actually compete against some of those best teams. Like we saw them beat Alabama on the road earlier this year, and then there was that 16-point win against Vandy, who was looking like one of the best teams in the country at that point. I think Texas has what it takes. And then
Yeah, they have
Nebraska versus
Texas
Navy,
is
I
3-6
think.
in the quad one as well, which is
Oh
part of the reason
yeah,
that is a 9-loss team they're in the tournament right now.
oh yeah. And then yeah, Nebraska and Navy. Nebraska's finally going to get a win in this tournament. It's about time. It's the best team that they've ever had, and unfortunately, I don't think Navy's good enough to keep that streak going.
Yeah, moving on to the South region, it'll be Iowa State and Howard, and I feel like this game's got to go to Iowa State. Um, yeah, really, I'm not seeing any of these 16 seeds that can pull it off this season. SMU, Georgia. I don't know. We've picked a couple SEC teams already. SMU, I feel like 8 seeds about right for them. Georgia, A 9 feels maybe a little bit low, but I haven't seen too much of Georgia recently, to be completely honest. I could go either way on this one as well.
I think I'm leaning SMU. I think that's more because I think a lot of the like games that I've done shorts for has been in the ACC, and I think I've seen SMU a good amount. But also, I get another recency bias thing. I can't get the video out of my head of the Georgia player like in overtime down three, driving in for a layup with like 2 seconds left instead of taking a three. So I I question the decision making a little bit, so I'm gonna lean SMU for that one.
Yeah, this 5-12 now. This was this is a tough one for me because BYU I feel like can either be really hot when AJ DeBansa is playing well, or they can go really cold. If he has a bad game, they could maybe lose to SF Austin, but uh, Stephen F. Austin just feels really high at a 12 seed as well. I feel like this is favorable for BYU. And I just don't really see a projected top picks for some people, the number one overall pick going out in the first round here in an upset.
Yeah, I think crazier things have happened, and it's not like completely out of the question. But I do feel like more often than not, BYU can handle. I mean, we even saw in the recent game against Kansas when they were down big at halftime that they were able to crawl back. So I do think they have it in them to win those games, even if Devance is not playing at his best.
Next up would be Louisville and UNC Wilmington. Gonna lean Louisville here as well. UNC Wilmington has had some good teams in the past. They're maybe one of those teams that can just like go crazy from the 3-point line and pull off an upset. I feel like it's really the only situation where they do that though, and I don't know if that's against Louisville. If you want to pick a big upset though, I would be totally fine making this that game.
Yeah, didn't they have a close game last year in the tournament, or am I thinking of something else? I feel like didn't maybe they played like Texas Tech or something, and it was kind of close for I don't know. We're kind of just going off on a tangent, but yeah, I agree with you. I think Louisville is the better team here, and they're going to end up winning this game. But UNC Wilmington would be a pretty popular upset pick at this point.
Yeah, Kentucky and St. Mary's, that's another interesting one. And I'm gonna be honest, there's always a first four team who ends up winning, and Kentucky this year has just been so up and down, and I feel like they're dropping some random games they definitely shouldn't, and I think that that could happen in the tournament as well. Kentucky loses early in the tournament way too often. I feel like St. Mary's is absolutely the team that could take them out.
Yeah, I know from experience because I've picked Kentucky to either win in a couple brackets or go pretty far, and they end up losing in the first round or the second round. It was the Oakland year. I think I had them as my national champs. So, yeah, I know that feeling all too well. So I don't hate it right now, especially with the way St. Mary's has been playing. Then for Michigan State, North Dakota State, I think the Spartans easily are going to win that game. I mean, even with the loss to Michigan recently, they're still one of the top teams in the country.
Yeah, Auburn, Miami. That one's, I mean, Auburn feels a little bit high as a 7 seed to me, just because they've lost quite a few games. I mean, this is another one of those teams that was pretty highly ranked in the preseason. They've dropped quite a bit. I don't know a ton about Miami's basketball team at this point. I need to watch a little bit more of them. 7-10 is very, very back and forth as well. We already picked a 10. There's another 10 actually that I like, so I'm kind of leaning towards just taking Auburn in this game.
Yeah, I agree because again, like you, I don't know a ton about this Miami team, but Miami historically has not been very good at basketball in the last few years. They've been like the worst team in the ACC. So I kind of think that this is a little bit of a no-brainer, even though Auburn had all that hype from last season, kind of the reason why they were ranked so highly early on. I think they're still a good enough team, though, and I think they can get a win over a Miami team that's actually found a groove.
Yeah, and then Illinois and Troy, I think that's a no-brainer. I love this Illinois team. They've been playing some
Agreed.
really good basketball. Just gave Nebraska their second loss of the season recently. Arizona, Harvard, another no-brainer. NC State, Wisconsin. I like Wisconsin as a nine. I think they're a very strong nine seed, and I would definitely take them to beat NC State here.
Yeah, I mean, it's not anything against the Wolfpack. I think they're also a very good team. I mean, the ACC is pretty loaded this year, and they find themselves in the top half of the conference. But I do think Wisconsin at times has shown that they can be a very dangerous team to play against. So I would bank on that team to get hot.
Yeah, and then I'm really questioning this next 5-12. Not because I don't know who's going to win, but because I think Texas Tech is seated too low. Or, yeah, they're seated too low, and Miami, Ohio is also seated way too low for what this team is right now. If you look further down the bracket, St. Louis is a 5 seed. Miami, Ohio is a 12. They haven't lost a game yet. St. Louis has only lost one game. Pretty similar resumes. I don't know. I just feel like Miami, Ohio should not be a 12 because they're not going to be an AQ at this point. They would be, or I guess they are an automatic qualifier, but they should be seated higher as an actual good team. And as far as who would win that game, Miami, Ohio is a very popular upset pick for a lot of people right now. And I'm just not buying it. I think they're a great team. They've been playing great. They've also gotten really lucky. You need that in March Madness, but I feel like Texas Tech is a team that is built to be able to stop something like that. And yeah, I just don't think Miami, Ohio is going to win a tournament game just because there's so much hype around them already.
Yeah, I agree. I also think Texas Tech, like you said, is way too low. I think they're still a tournament favorite because they've played very well all season, despite that recent loss to UCF.
Now, Virginia, UC Irvine. That's another interesting game. UCI, I think, has been close to pulling off upsets in the past, and Virginia is no stranger to being upset as well. I don't know about you, Connor, but I'm gonna pick UC Irvine here as our first big upset.
You know, I don't hate it because Virginia has kind of been all over the place, and UC Irvine has pulled off upset. I think I can't remember how many years ago it was, but I believe the Anteaters beat Kansas State kind of in the same situation. They might have been a 12 seed going up against a 5, but I mean, they've done it before, and I don't see why they couldn't do it again against a team that has, like you said, lost in upset fashion a couple times already.
Now, these next two are also kind of interesting. Cal, just barely here in the tournament, is one of the last four teams with a bye. And then Alabama, six seed, I think is the lowest they've been in the last few years. I still really like this Alabama team. They can absolutely turn it on and drop some points. I think Bama wins that 6-11 pretty easily. And then Purdue and Portland State. Now, is this the year that Purdue can finally cross off the 14 seed and have officially lost to every single double digit seed in the tournament? I'm gonna go ahead and say no, but that doesn't mean it's out of the question that Purdue could get upset really early on.
I mean, it would just be comedic at that point, and that's just what the script writers have had in their bag if Purdue is going to lose that. But I do think that they're still a pretty good team. Then Iowa, Utah State. I don't know about you, Jonah, but I'm kind of leaning Utah State for some reason. I believe they snuck into the rankings for just a little bit before getting upset, but I still think this Aggies team is pretty decent. I mean, they're playing against teams like New Mexico, who you said has a decent chance to make the tournament and has been here before. I think they have the potential to get a win against an Iowa team that has been pretty solid over the last few years.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. I think Iowa's been, in my opinion, pretty underrated all season. But I mean, that doesn't mean they're going to end up making the tournament as a seven seed. I would imagine that if they do make it, they'll fall down a little bit and probably they feel like an eight or nine seed to me as far as what they'll end up as. UConn and UT Martin. UConn's been playing some great basketball recently. That's one of those upsets that if it happens, it shocks everybody. And there's no reason for us to predict that. Same thing here with Michigan and Vermont. This Michigan team has been phenomenal so far this season. And you got Clemson and Indiana. This is 8-9. I mean, Clemson's been playing really well recently. They've got themselves up into the top 20 now. So I'm just not super high on this Indiana team. Really, their only big win is Purdue, and they got it done at home. They've split with Purdue, I think. Either that or they have a winning record against Purdue over the last 4 seasons. So I'm not putting too much stock in that. I think Clemson would win that game.
I agree. I think Clemson's resume is actually pretty good too. I mean, they haven't won all their big games, especially early on in the season when they were playing against Alabama and BYU, who are ranked in the top 10 or just outside the top 10. But they have wins against SMU, Miami, who's a tournament team here, and they got a couple good upcoming games as well. California and Duke are probably the two biggest one. Then they play Louisville at the end of the month as well. So I do think this Clemson team has proven that they can be very consistent against some of the best teams. So I like them here against Indiana as well.
Yeah, St. Louis and Belmont. I'm not going to pretend like I know a lot about Belmont. But St. Louis, they might be a little bit overseeded here, even in my opinion. I could see St. Louis being like a 6 seed, and I feel like this is one of those 5-12s that St. Louis isn't necessarily a big enough name that they should be getting picked a lot. I'm fine picking Belmont here and giving ourselves a 5-12 upset. Then Gonzaga and Utah Valley. I don't think we see a 13 over 4 in this scenario. So I'm going to go Gonzaga here. They've been playing well enough, in my opinion, to be able to win a 4-13 game like that. Utah Valley, I just don't think has it in them this season.
Yeah, I mean, despite Gonzaga at times showing some vulnerability, I think it was the Seattle game about a month ago or however long ago it was where they nearly lost, and I think it had to go to overtime. But I think more often than not, the Bulldogs have shown that they can be pretty consistent, and I would still take them to beat Utah Valley here. But I think this would be one of the more likely upsets to happen if one is going to happen, in my opinion. But I don't know. That's just me.
Yeah, then North Carolina and Missouri. This is another interesting one. Missouri's had some really good games in SEC play. They'll obviously have been tested to this point, but I feel like, I don't know, North Carolina as a seed just feels like somebody who could maybe go on a run to me. It's early enough that I'm not going to have great reasons for making a lot of these picks. I like North Carolina over Mizzou there. And then Vandy and Wright State. I'll take Vandy.
Yeah, no objections. With the North Carolina one, I find it kind of similar to Kentucky and St. Mary's, where I think Missouri could pull off that upset as a first four team in, just because North Carolina has kind of been up and down. Sometimes they look like a really great team that, like you said, could make a run, but other times they've dropped a couple games in a row in some pretty disappointing fashions. But I do think for right now, I'm fine with leaning the Tar Heels because they've obviously been here before and have made runs before.
Yeah, A&M UCLA. I actually like the Bruins here. I feel like they've been playing really well. They also beat Purdue at home. Seems to be a common theme with Purdue losing to worse teams than them when they go away from home. So I guess they lost to Indiana at home too. So not even necessarily that. So Purdue definitely needs to watch out for a 14 seed if they get them this year because destiny might be calling for them. Houston and Austin, PA. Houston will win that one.
Yeah, nothing, nothing to disagree about. I agree.
Houston might hold them to like 40 points. Duke and Villanova kicking off the second round. I think Villanova could potentially pull this one off, but I feel confident enough in Duke. Cam Boozer, I saw stats recently that he's playing better than Cooper Flagg in almost every category. I think it's 3 out of the major 4. So Duke is, I don't want to say underrated, because they definitely aren't, but they're probably a little bit better even than people are expecting this season, at least compared to last year. So I think Duke should be able to win a 1-8 game like that. Tennessee and Florida. I like Florida here. I think the defending national champions have a really good team and are going to be able to win a few tourney games here.
Yeah, and we saw how this played out a couple of weeks ago, and Florida just utterly dominated Tennessee. And I think that it's not necessarily going to happen again that badly, but I do think Florida is a team that has built themselves to be a very, very solid team once the tournament rolls around. And I do think they can give essentially any team that they're going to face throughout the tournament good fight. So I like Florida there too.
Yeah, now this next one I think is really interesting. Arkansas and Kansas, or Arkansas and Kansas, whichever one you want to choose. These teams are both really solid. Personally, I like the youth on this Kansas team. I feel like they're really, really good. And they had a huge win today, as of us recording this, over Texas Tech on the road. Very impressed by that. So as of right now, I am leaning Kansas in this game.
Yeah, I think the big thing the Jayhawks have is that they're consistent. There's not like one guy scoring 25 points per game and the rest of the guys on the team or on the floor are scoring like 10 to 15 points per game. They're all kind of hovering around just under 20 points per game. And I think that level of consistency and the depth that you have on that roster is what makes them built for the tournament. So I agree with you. I do think Calipari can coach this Razorbacks team to a little bit of an upset, especially considering the fact that last year Arkansas played Kentucky or not Kentucky, Arkansas played Kansas in the first round last year and was able to beat the Jayhawks. I think the Jayhawks will be out for a little bit of revenge.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Now, I think you're going to like my next pick, so I don't know if I'm even going to ask you about it. We're going to go Texas over Nebraska here. Nebraska finally gets their first tournament win, only over a 15 seed. After that, they're done. Texas moves
Yeah,
on.
I mean that's the storyline right there. I mean that's what's got to happen. No objections.
Iowa State and SMU. I really do like this Iowa State team. I don't know if they're going to end up finishing as a one seed. I could see somebody else creeping up to that one line, maybe even a Houston. They're probably my favorite as of right now. Even Illinois has been looking really good. It would be crazy to see two Big Ten teams get up there, but it's not impossible. But either way, I think that they're good enough to beat SMU. Of the 1 and 8 matchups, I feel like this is the most likely to be an upset, but I'm still going to go ahead and take Iowa State to make the Sweet 16.
Yeah, I agree with everything there. Just another thing, I think UConn actually might be the one team I think could up and take that number one seed away from Iowa State. I think in some other bracketologies that aren't the CBS one, UConn is actually a number one seed, but it's going to be a tight race between some of those two seeds like UConn, Houston, Nebraska, and Illinois even. It just depends on how those conference tourneys shake out.
Absolutely. Then BYU and Louisville. Was was this a first round game last year?
No, it was Creighton and Louisville
Okay.
last
It
year.
similar colors. That's what I was kind of thinking of. Either way, I think that both of these teams are really solid, but I'm leaning BYU here. I really like Debansa, and I feel like having that star player is what's going to be able to help a team like BYU win a few games in March Madness. Louisville's good overall, very well balanced, but they don't have that one guy who's going to be a top pick in the NBA draft just because that's not every team has that. So I feel like BYU should be able to win a game like this.
Yeah, could easily turn into a very good game, especially like we mentioned earlier on with BYU if Debanza has a rough day from the field. But again, I think the supporting cast at BYU as we get closer and closer to the tournament is going to get better and better to support Debanza. So he doesn't have to necessarily carry the team on his back at all times, but he can if he does want to, or if he does decide to turn it up.
Yeah, then you got St. Mary's and Michigan State. This one, I do like Michigan State. I feel like the Spartans have a really good team this year. A 3 seed. They have to be a 3 seed right now, but I feel like the Big Ten honestly is wide open. Yes, Michigan's a 1 seed and they are playing phenomenal basketball, but we saw them cool off a little bit earlier in the season, particularly earlier on in January. And if that happens around the conference tournament time, I could see somebody like Michigan State or Illinois going and stealing away that Big Ten title and potentially a 1 seed. So I really like this Michigan State team. I think that they would be able to handle an 11 seed in St. Mary's.
Yeah, I mean it's Tom Izzo. He's been here more times than anyone can count, probably currently in the college basketball landscape, and I trust essentially any team that he's going to send out there.
Yeah, Illinois Auburn. If you look at this preseason, people would probably think it's a later game than just a second round matchup. But based on how the two teams are playing right now, I think we have an all Big Ten game here in the Sweet 16. I really like Illinois.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, they've been playing lights out for the entirety of this season. Like you said, I think they can make a run for a Big Ten championship if they get over the hump against some of those top Big Ten teams like Nebraska and Michigan when the conference tournament rolls around.
Yeah, now Arizona and Wisconsin, I think this is an unfortunate matchup for Arizona. I don't think they should have to play a team like Wisconsin this early on. And this is a game where I absolutely could see a team like Arizona getting upset, even though they're the number one team in the country right now. Wisconsin has been able to beat some really good teams. We saw them beat Michigan on the road, and it was just because they got hot from the 3-point range. And they've done that multiple times this year. They were able to fend off Ohio State playing one of their best games of the season by just draining threes all game long. And I think that Michigan game, they shot something like 45% from three or something absolutely ridiculous. So they absolutely could beat Arizona, but I'm still going to take Arizona just because I think it would take a miracle for Wisconsin to be able to hit threes from at that same level of consistency for an entire game again. But there's a few one seeds here that definitely need to be worried. Iowa State, I think, is not as good as Arizona, but I feel like Wisconsin has a better chance of pulling off an upset than SMU does.
Yeah, they shot 45% in that Michigan game from three. They're, as a team, as of right now, shooting about 35%. So quite a bit above average for that game. And obviously, it does show that they can get hot if they choose to. And they have some experienced guys from last year's team who were also pretty good. But I do think Arizona, I mean, they're undefeated. They're the number one team in the country for a reason. I think they have been battle tested and they will be battle tested against the rest of the Big 12 as they get into the tournament. I feel like whatever Wisconsin might end up doing, whatever miracles they might end up pulling off, they'll still be able to handle it.
Yeah, but again, that game definitely could go to Wisconsin. So I feel like if Wisconsin is not if Wisconsin's playing anybody other than Arizona in that second round, I think they could make a Sweet 16 run very easily. Now, Texas Tech and UC Irvine, I think that Texas Tech is able to get past that one without too much difficulty. And then Bama, Purdue. I'm sorry, Purdue, but I'm taking Alabama here. If they can turn it on, they can drop 100 points. It's going to be tough for Purdue to keep up. They have a team that can score that much, but I just feel like Alabama can make a run this season as well, just because of how well that they can score.
Yeah, I haven't been loving Purdue as of late. You mentioned it earlier, those losses to UCLA and Indiana, and they also have a loss to Illinois. Granted, Illinois is a good team, but I don't know. Something's rubbing me the wrong way with the Boilermakers. I know Braden Smith is one of the best players in the country, but I think it's going to be another pretty sad exit for the Boilermakers in the tournament once again.
Yeah, and then UConn and Utah State. I'm going to go ahead and take UConn here. I think that they are just a really good team right now. You said they could potentially make a run of the one seed. Definitely true. Michigan and Clemson. I like Michigan here. I think this Clemson team, they'd have to play an incredible game in order to take down the Wolverines. So I'm really confident in Michigan in that game. And then Belmont Gonzaga. You said earlier that Gonzaga was a team that's had some bad games. We don't have a double digit seed in our Sweet 16 yet.
I don't know if I'd go that far because I don't know. Belmont got a pretty easy draw with a St. Louis team that might be ranked too highly, but I mean, if we're gonna have one, I guess that's got to be the one. But I'm not saying I necessarily agree with it. I do think Gonzaga at times can be a team that can make a run, but for the sake of it right now, since there's not much at stake, I'm perfectly fine with picking Belmont.
Yeah, I just also feel like Gonzaga could potentially have an early exit. And to be completely honest, none of these games are going to be actual tournament games. The whole bracket's going to change by then. So we're really just kind of doing this to get a feel for how far teams can go, what teams can potentially make runs. It's kind of the whole point here. Vanderbilt and North Carolina. I don't want to call myself a Vanderbilt hater because I think Vanderbilt's doing very well this season, but I think that Vanderbilt is definitely the three seed that would lose to North Carolina out of all of them. I really like this North Carolina team. I also think that they're pretty underseeded at six, given that they're ranked number 14 in the country right now.
So you hate Vanderbilt is what I'm getting. That's exactly what you're telling me. I don't know if I'd say also they're the three seed I'd expect to lose to North Carolina because don't forget Purdue is number three seed. I mean that would also happen. But you know what? I don't hate it either because Vandy at times has shown that maybe they don't show up. The Texas game is the biggest example of that. So I do think North Carolina can turn it up at times, and I kind of like that upset pick for them there.
Yeah, this is also another one of those questions that I have for CBS as far as how they were making this bracketology, because at least looking at the AP poll, North Carolina is ranked number 14 right now, and Vanderbilt is ranked number 15. So North Carolina is actually the higher ranked team, but they're three seeds lower. UCLA and Houston. This is another. I mean, I could see UCLA winning, but this Houston defense, it's not necessarily as strong as it has been in past years, but I feel like they've kind of just fixed that aspect of it by scoring more points per game. So I still think Houston is a really good team, and I would at least take them to beat UCLA.
Yeah, Houston's my crutch team every single year for like the past 3 or 4 years. I've probably had them in my Final Four or in my national championship game, probably the last 2 years for sure. I know they were my national champions last season. I was really upset that Florida ended up beating them. But yeah, I mean, the defense has been the staple for them. And now that they've been able to maybe balance it out and offset it a little bit with some better offense, not necessarily saying their offense was bad in past years, but I do think that's a good improvement. And I think that once again, they're going to be one of the best teams when March rolls around.
Yeah, now on to the Sweet 16. Duke and Florida, defending national champions against one of the best players in college basketball in Cam Boozer. And I'm kind of torn on this one, but I feel like I have to go with Duke here. They've just they've been playing so good this season, and I think Cam Boozer is an incredible player. The fact that he has better stats than Cooper Flagg to this point in the season is ridiculous.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too far ahead because I mean a lot of things can happen, but I think the winner of this game in this scenario, I think would be going to the Final Four and maybe even the national championship game. I think both these teams with everything going right are easily two of the best teams in the entire country. I mean, I think Florida has potential to jump up a couple of seeds and maybe even snatch up a two seed when the SEC tournament ends up occurring. But I'm with you here. I do think with the way the Blue Devils have been playing, we'd be a little foolish to not pick them to beat Florida, even if they are the defending national champs.
I do think that's a great point. Florida's schedule was absolutely front loaded. And just from what I'm seeing, they're only playing one currently ranked team the rest of the regular season in nine more games. So Florida could win, their last nine games of the year. And with how they beat Alabama on Sunday, it not out of the question whatsoever. So I am with you on this one. I think Florida could jump up a couple seeds as well. Kansas and Texas. This is another interesting game. I feel like we could potentially see Texas make an even further run here. It's I talked about liking Kansas's youth earlier on. Texas also has some on their team, but I don't know. I feel like I'm not necessarily having a great reason for it, but I kind of feel like Texas wins this game.
I mean, it'd be funny for the script, but I'm personally leaning Kansas because I feel like they've fallen short the past couple of years, a couple times. I mean, maybe I'm not remembering everything super right, but obviously they were a first round exit last year against Arkansas, and I feel like the year before they lost to I think Illinois in the second round when they were number one seed or something like that. I kind of lean both ways too. The part of me that's picking Kansas is that Texas has just been so up and down throughout the season. I don't know if we're necessarily going to see that much success over so many days or over so many games. We can pick up Texas for now because I think that will end up, making sense as one of the teams we could see making a run at such a lower seed. But I think personally, I would lean more Kansas in that scenario. But I'm fine with Texas for right now.
I'll go ahead and give you Kansas. You've given me a couple of my picks, and I think your arguments are actually really solid there. And just, I mean, looking at Texas's run so far, they beat St. John's as just a 10-7 upset. And then beating Nebraska. Sure, Nebraska has a really good team, but that's more of just fitting the fact that Nebraska's only ever won one tournament game in this reality. So it feels like it's not a very difficult run for them to make, and Kansas would be a massive step up in competition. So I'm more than fine with that. I like BYU over Iowa State now. I've already said that I think Iowa State is the weakest one seed. And this BYU team, it, again, this is another team that probably can move up a seed or two if they finish the season like I think they're going to. So I feel like this is a game, if it were to happen, I like BYU here.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of funny how we started talking about BYU all the way back in the first round as, oh, they might be a potential first round exit if AJ Debinsa doesn't shoot well from the field. Now we have them beating the number one seed in their region and moving on to the Elite Eight. But I do think this team has so much potential and can make a deep run into the bracket and maybe even find themselves in the Final Four because I think that team is that talented.
Yeah, now this Michigan State and Illinois game, I think is going to be a really good game. And the reason I say is going to be a really good game is we're going to see this one on Saturday. Michigan State's hosting it, and that's the only time we're going to see it in the regular season. Maybe we'll get it in the conference tournament, but I really have no idea in this one. Both of these teams have been really good. My personal pick is going to be Illinois, but I could see this going either way. Just both teams have been incredible so far this season.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the big thing for Illinois is that they've shown how explosive they can be. I think actually they're pretty similar, like points per game wise, with their rosters. Like no one's scoring 20 points per game on this team. I think uh Jeremy Fears is scoring like 18.6, and then the freshman guard Keaton Wagler for Illinois is scoring 18.1 points per game. Like both these teams just have a very solid amount of depth on their team. But I think Illinois has shown that they can be one of the most explosive teams in the country. And I think that they can just squeeze out a win against Michigan State in this scenario. But like you said, we'll see on Saturday.
Yeah, Michigan State does host that. It would be neutral in that. So that makes it even tougher to predict. As far as who we're picking Saturday, you'll have to go watch our short, which will come out on Saturday. Now, Arizona and Texas Tech, a Big 12 matchup for Arizona here already. And I think Arizona's the better team. I really like Texas Tech, but this just, to me at least, doesn't feel like a game that Arizona would lose.
I am going back and forth. I really want to pick Texas Tech, especially because Arizona only beat BYU by 3. It was a really close game on the road just a couple days ago. And this will also be a matchup we'll see. It's a little bit later. It's on the 14th of this month. But again, I think this one could go either way. But once again, Arizona's undefeated for a reason, and I need to have a better reason than just vibes to pick against them right now. So I'm going with you. I'm going with the Wildcats.
Yeah, now that being said, I don't know if Arizona will be undefeated for a whole lot longer. Um, but at least until next Monday, you'll go ahead and you're gonna have to wait on that one as well and see what our prediction's going to be. I'm not even sure what it's going to be yet, but I think as of right now, I might be leaning Kansas to give Arizona their first loss on the 9th of this month. Now, Alabama and UConn. That is another interesting matchup. This could very well be a game that has around 200 points scored. But I feel like this is where Bama's run comes to an end. I really like this UConn team, and I have no shame in picking a 1-2 Elite Eight matchup here.
I mean, yeah, it's Dan Hurley. He has been here so many times, and just because Alabama has similarly shown to like what I said about Texas has shown that they can either play really well or kind of poorly at times. I'll trust the UConn team that has been pretty solid all year round. Now they have had a couple close games against some of the Big East opponents like Villanova. I think was a close game. Providence. I think even Seton Hall gave them a run. DePaul as well. But I do think once the tournament rolls around, I think we talked about it a lot last year too. Tournament rolls around, UConn gets a whole lot better, and I do expect them to be able to beat a team like Alabama.
Yeah, 100%. Now, for this next game, Michigan and Belmont, I want you to hear me out for just a second. Michigan wins by 40.
I completely disagree. I think Michigan wins by 50.
Yeah, that's just a free game for Michigan there. Belmont, there's just no chance. This Michigan team's too good. Now, North Carolina and Houston. This I really want to pick North Carolina, but I don't know if I can pick against this Houston team this early on. It feels like they just always make it to the Elite Eight. I can't even remember the last time they didn't. Honestly, it might have been like five years ago or something. I feel like it was Illinois maybe who beat them and kept them out. But I have to pick Houston here, but I really want to pick North Carolina if that makes sense.
I mean, Houston's going to be so battle tested. I'm looking at their schedule for like the month of February, and they play BYU on the road on Saturday. They play Iowa State on the road on the 16th. They play against Arizona on the 21st. They play on the road against Kansas on the 23rd. I mean, that's what? Three top 15, borderline top 15 matchups all on the road. And then you play the number one team in the country. And then you go into the Big 12 tournament. They're going to be more than ready to handle any team that they will face in this tournament. And like you said, maybe North Carolina can give them a scare, but I do trust their experience and that the fact that they've been here before. So they'll move on.
Yeah, now moving on to our Elite Eight. Duke and Kansas, you hinted at it earlier. I think the winner of Duke and Florida would move on to the Final Four. I think this Kansas team is really good, but as of right now, I cannot bet against Cam Boozer. I really like this Duke team, and I think that they get it done.
No notes. I agree.
All right, making it quick. BYU and Illinois. Devansa's great. I love this Illinois team. Wagler's been playing amazing. He dropped 46. Can't believe we haven't mentioned that yet. 46 points in a game. That's insane. And I don't think he's better than Devansa, but I think that the Illinois team as a whole can support Wagler a little bit better than BYU can support Devansa, which is my only reason really for picking Illinois here.
Yeah, I think either one of those teams can win. It's just gonna come down to who has the better shooting night or which team has the off night, and it's so hard to predict at this point because I mean it's a hypothetical matchup and both teams have shown a lot of promise. But like you said, I kind of like this Illinois team just a little bit more than BYU. I think that they have shown that they have been very consistent all year round, and I think they can beat BYU. But once again, it wouldn't surprise me if BYU managed to get a pretty emphatic win over them.
Yeah, now Arizona and UConn. This is another really good game. I think both of these teams have really good offenses. I mentioned earlier, I think Arizona could potentially lose their first game this month against UConn. This is a really tough one to predict, but I kind of have to go with Arizona here. They've been overall just better so far this season. Obviously, a lot of things can change by the time the tournament rolls around, but for now, I really like this Arizona team, and I think that they get it done in a close game.
Yeah, it's my same reasoning for why I picked Houston to move on against North Carolina. This month they play at Kansas, then they play Texas Tech, and then BYU, and then at Houston, and then they play Kansas again, and then they play Iowa State on March 2nd. Again, they're going to be one of the most tested teams in the country. And I do think UConn, as I mentioned with the Alabama game, like they have shown some flaws at times against some of their Big East opponents that aren't in this tournament. And I think Arizona has not really shown very many flaws. So it's hard to pick against them at this point.
Yeah, now Michigan and Houston. This is, in my opinion, the most intriguing game out of these four. I think Michigan has a really good team so far this season. But when you look at their tournament run so far, they haven't had to play anybody yet. Clemson's the only really like decent team that they've had to play. Houston has had to get past UCLA and North Carolina to this point. Plus, I mean, both of these teams are going to be very well tested. I'm not even going to try and make that argument because we know the Big Ten and Big 12 are both very strong conferences, a lot of good teams at the top. Both of these teams have a gauntlet to continue to be a 1 and 2 seed by the time the tournament rolls around. But I've seen Michigan go cold for a longer period of time so far this season than I've seen that from Houston. So personally, I'm going to lean Houston here. I really could see either team winning. I don't hate either pick, so I'll go ahead and let you pick this one, Connor.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn. It's the same thing. I mean, the front court of Michigan is arguably the best in the entire country, and they've played like the best team in the country at times, especially early on in the season. But I don't know. Something's telling me this Houston team, I mean, it's the same thing every year. They just find ways to win games, and I don't know what it is. I'm leaning Houston just ever so slightly, and again, this Michigan team, I could easily see winning a national championship. If they played against UConn like Arizona did, or against Kansas, BYU, honestly, if they played against any other team here besides Duke, Arizona, and that's really it. Duke, Arizona, and Houston. I'd probably pick them to win and move on to the Final Four. But Houston has just been here so many times. They're one of the most consistent teams in the country year after year. Kingston Flemings, as a freshman, leading their team in scoring, has just been phenomenal. And again, it's too early to tell. I need to see how these teams continue to play throughout this month with their schedules. But as of right now, I'm going with Houston just because I think they've just been here so many times that they're going to find a way to get the job done.
Yeah, I like that pick. Now, Duke and Illinois, I'm very torn on this one. I think both of these teams are really, really good, and I want to pick Illinois because I think this team is really good. But for now, I cannot pick against Cam Boozer. I have Duke in the national championship.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of like what you were saying about BYU earlier on with Debanza. Duke just has that number one guy, the guy that can absolutely take over a game in Cam Boozer. And it's not to say Illinois doesn't have that. I mean, they have a lot of guys that could take over the game if they wanted to. But that's the thing. You never know who it's going to be. For Duke, you know it's coming from Cam Boozer night after night, and he is going to be a game wrecker. He's going to be the reason that Duke is going to consistently win games. And I think Illinois can give them a great fight. But at the end of the day, this Blue Devils team has just been here so many times. They have some of the best players in all of college basketball, led by Cam Boozer. I do think they find themselves in the national championship game, at least at this point.
Now, Arizona and Houston. Now, we've been talking this whole time. Arizona's undefeated. They are a phenomenal team. And I'm going to go ahead and drop a take because if you stuck around this far, um, I wouldn't be shocked if Arizona's not a 1 seed by the time the tournament actually rolls around, just because of how difficult their schedule is the rest of the way. It feels like they have to drop at least one game, and from that point on, there's multiple games that I could see them losing, potentially even drop a few in a row, just because of how tough this schedule is. And like Connor said earlier, Houston finds ways to win games in the tournament, and I feel like they'd be able to get it done in a really close battle with Arizona here. But yeah, I like this Houston team. I feel like at this point, Houston very well could end up as a 1 seed, and it might be at the expense of Arizona.
It's funny, Houston's right back in the same situation again. It's tough for me to pick between these two teams because we have to see them play against each other a little bit later on. But I mean, Houston's two losses. It's a road loss against Texas Tech, and I'm trying to find their second loss, but. Oh, it's to Tennessee earlier on in the year. I mean, this team started as the number one team in the country, or they were the number two team, then quickly jumped to the number one team. They're good. They are a very good team. And so is Arizona. It's not to take anything away from Arizona. But again, Houston's been here before. They find ways to win. They're led by a freshman with a great supporting cast. It's going to be back to the national championship for them at this point. But again, Arizona could find themselves there as well. But I don't know. Just something's telling me the Cougars find their way back to another national championship stage.
Yeah, and here's where the Houston fans are going to hate at least me. Once again, I don't have them winning that national championship game. I'd love for Houston to be able to get it done, but I really like this Duke team right now. And it seems like Houston finds ways to win unless it's in the national championship. So I'm gonna have to go with Duke for me.
Yeah, I said it earlier. Houston's been my crutch. I mean, I had them winning the national championship last year. I've had them going far quite a bit, and I've just really liked them over the past couple of years because their defense has been good. But this Duke team fell in the Final Four with Cooper Flag at the very end of the game to Houston last year. And they want revenge, and they're going to get it on the biggest stage of the entire tournament, at least as of right now. I agree with your pick. Duke has just been a phenomenal team thus far, and at this point, I think they are the front runner for the national championship.
Yeah, and like we've been saying from the beginning of the video, Cam Boozer has better stats than Cooper Flag as of right now. And I don't feel like that's being talked about quite enough. And I think that's just enough to get them over the hump and beat Houston this time around. And unfortunately for Houston, it is again no national championship. So yeah, Duke is our early February first bracketology national champions. Thank you guys for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe. We're going to try and do a bracketology about once a week in between our college football expectations videos. So go ahead, subscribe, stay tuned for all of that. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in our next video.